What do you say? What do you know? It's the full Monte Sports Show with Nuts and Bolts Sports. We are halftime of the number one Alabama Crimson Tide against the number three Georgia Bulldogs. So much to talk about. Joe Cardoso was going to join us. Unfortunately, he couldn't. So we have someone who's not only a pinch hitter in many college football circles, he bats cleanup. Let's bring him on. Jeff Barnes. How are you today, Jeff? How do you like that
I'm good.
intro?
Oh, listen, I can't ask for anything better than that, man. That's you're better than Eddie McMahon.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Okay, so much to get to talk to with college football. This game has really been kind of conservative on both sides of the ball. Not a lot of offense, which I kind of expected because they know each other so well. We're going to get into all that, but we got plenty of time. So right now, what I want to ask you, Week 18 of the NFL, to me, one of the craziest weeks I've ever seen from the Steelers going into overtime and winning. San Francisco coming back. McVay has never lost a game when he was ahead at halftime. He loses. And of course, the debacle between Brandon Staley of the Chargers. What to you was the biggest takeaway of Week 18?
Well, first things first, the schedule makers are taking a bow somewhere in NFL headquarters because they couldn't have drawn it up any better for it to go down to the last game, to the final second, for it to come down to whether they were going to tie and both teams go in or kick the field goal. Amazing job by the schedule makers for putting together a tight schedule this year. It played out to the fullest. I think what you saw with the two AFC West teams, with everything to play for, falling flat in the second half of their games where they had the chance to take control. I think that is a big tell because what you had was the Rams had number two locked up. All they had to
Yep.
do was win. For them to go in there and fall apart like that the way they did was big. The Niners to come out there and beat them the way they did after being laid waste to in the first half. I mean, they was in total control of that game. The Rams were, and to have the Niners come back and just literally ram it down their throats. There were no big fancy plays. There weren't any big defensive scores. It was just straight ball control offense. We're going to pound this down your throat, and we're going to make it a game. And they did just that. Give them credit to the Niners for not losing their identity. And then you have the Arizona Cardinals, where you saw them in Dallas the week before take control of a game in Dallas against a hot Cowboy team, to turn around and have a chance to, with the Rams struggling, to take control of that division and then to fall flat and give up all of those rushing yards to Seattle. Very, very big mistake. So now they're a wild card on the road, going to a division rival who they split with, a good chance of going one and done in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, that brings up, and we'll get to the college football stuff in about 1 minute. You're going to do some preview shows, so you don't have to give it this week on Nuts and Bolts Sports YouTube channel. You don't have to give us a full preview. But if I'm Dallas right now, the one team you don't want to play is the 49ers because they could get to the quarterback and they could hold the ball for 7, 8, 9 minutes in a quarter by just running it. This is the worst case scenario if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan. Am I wrong on the outside looking in?
No, I don't think it's the worst case scenario. To me, Arizona was the worst case scenario because if you look at Arizona, Kyler Murray negates, and you saw it in that game. Kyler Murray negates Parsons. All right, he makes him look like just a good player, not a very excellent athlete. All right, and that's what kind of made Dallas struggle defensively against him because he negated the pass rush, he negated their best player, and he was able to make plays. With Jimmy Garoppolo, he's the kind of quarterback that they excel at getting pressure on. As long as they can control that running game in the first half and get pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo, and their offense moves the ball. That's the big one. If the offense moves the ball and puts up points and they control the San Francisco offense, then Dallas has the control. So this is a better matchup for Dallas than like an Arizona would be.
Again, my last point here, I would expect San Francisco, especially if they get in the red zone, to put Trey Lance in. We saw what Marcus Mariota did, who Carr is not as mobile, and it kind of negated Bosa for the Chargers, that pass rush, because Mariota was able to use the run-pass option. All right, let's get to the national championship game. There's two rules. There's two rules of thought here. One is when you play a team a second time or a third time or a fourth time in 2 years, you have two things. One is we do what we do, you have to stop us. I never believed in that. As a former coach, what I would do when I play a team a second time, I would do the old Larry Brown NBA head coach trick. I would use one of their plays or two of their plays and put that into our plays. So, for example, if I had 10 plays on offense and I'm coaching Duke, when I play North Carolina a second time, I go North Carolina 1, North Carolina 2. It doesn't look to me, and I'm very upset about this, on both sides of the ball, that Alabama hasn't used any trick plays. Georgia hasn't used any trick plays. It's basically, this is what we do. And Kirk Herbstreit, I don't know what he's thinking. He keeps saying, we're not going to turn the ball over on third down. We're going to let Stetson run it. It was a 3rd and goal there. And I mean, I saw that play coming a mile away. It looks like both of these teams are playing not to lose. I expect that from Georgia and Kirby Smart, but not from Nick Saban.
Well, credit both defensive coordinators, because if I'm watching the All-22 and I'm watching this game and I'm looking at what defenses are doing, I'm looking at the rotation of safeties, and give credit to what both of these defensive coordinators are doing. What Bama's defense is doing, mixing up their fronts, where they're mixing up the coverages, giving a lot of different looks to Stetson Bennett, making him think, making him hold the football when he doesn't have anybody open, and they're allowing their pass rush to get to him. They're playing a lot of different coverage looks, confusing him in the pocket. If you switch over to the other side, Georgia, right? You traditionally odd front, playing a lot of even front tonight.
Yeah.
Right, playing a lot of two shell, and what they're doing in the back.
Jeff, let me just interrupt you for a second. Explain to the average fan who may not know what you're talking about now with the two shell. Explain to them what that means.
Absolutely. So when we talk about two shell, everybody knows what cover two, the two high safeties. Well, when you play two shell, you're showing that cover two look, but doesn't mean at the snap of the ball, you're going to be in cover two. Sometimes you're going to be in cover one man. Sometimes you're going to be in cover two man. Sometimes you'll be in different cover two zones, or even cover three where you're rotating to a 3 deep zone. So what they're doing is different looks out of that cover two look. And then what they're doing is sometimes they're bringing a safety down in man coverage and blitzing off the outside. Sometimes they're just keeping those safeties high and playing man underneath, different zone looks. They're doing a lot of things to confuse the quarterback for Alabama.
Let me just elaborate on that. Basically, what Jeff is saying is they're showing a look for Bryce Young, the quarterback, and as soon as he snaps the ball, they're switching that look. So Bryce Young, there was one play where he thought it was man because they lined up in man, and then they switched it to zone, and he was totally confused.
Absolutely.
So they're doing a lot of, let me show you what you think we're doing. It's a chess match, and props to both defensive coordinators. Now, one of the things that I thought that would be apparent is that Georgia is one of the reasons Georgia dominated Michigan is because Georgia can stop the run, but I don't think they're very good at the pass. We're looking at both of these teams now. Georgia is predicated on the run. They want to set that up for the play action, but you're looking at both of these teams here, less than 25 yards rushing. Where's Robinson? Where's the Georgia offense? How do they get that going?
Well, that is the mystery for Alabama. We know about the injuries on the offensive line. We know some of those guys are playing hurt. All right. We also know top 2 wide receivers for Bama are out. So there is no fear of the big play. We saw that in the first half. And with the mix of coverages, they make him hold the ball, making him check down a lot, making him force balls in the tight windows underneath. He had the one big play where he fit it in the deep window and he did break away, but he couldn't finish in the end zone, ended up in another field goal drive. So they're trying to make they're trying to make Bama go 80 yards in 10, 12, 14 plays. They're not trying to give it up in one big play, and that's where they lost it in the conference championship game. Was they did give up that big play. They did give up a lot of those big chunks, and they're taking that away today. So it's about these offenses being patient. You see, Bill O'Brien knows that there's a protection issue, which is why he's getting those quick throws out in the flat.
Great point.
Right?
Great point.
So there's a lot of different things they're trying to do. When they see the too high look, he tried to check to a run a couple of times. A couple of times it hit for 4 or 5 yards. A couple of times it didn't hit at all. They stuffed it. Okay, they had a perfect run blitz on. So once again, the confusion and the chess match between the coordinators is playing out on the field. It's affecting your Heisman Trophy winner. It's affecting Stetson Bennett on the other side. And both these teams are pretty strong up front, which explains why they're both struggling against the run.
Okay, so we saw the one play by George Pickens, who, by the way, if he was healthy, I compare him to Justin Jefferson, who played
Yeah.
for LSU and now Minnesota. If he was healthy all year, he's a top 5 pick. We saw
Hmm.
them throw. It was a 52-yard. He made a great diving catch, and then they don't target him deep anymore. You gotta try. You got Jimbo Fisher, who's the only assistant coach to beat Nick Saban at Texas A&M this year, said in the pregame, "Look, you gotta be aggressive. You can't say we're not going to go for it big on third down, especially now with pass interference. Everything favors to the offense. Why isn't Georgia throwing the ball deep?
Once again, I think that the edict is do not turn the football over. All right. So if that's the case, what typically happens to your quarterback that's set, you tell him repeatedly, don't turn it over.
He's
Let's
not
play
going to take
within
chances.
ourselves. He's not going to take the big chance. If he doesn't see it, he's not going to throw it. And right now, Bennett isn't seeing those. He had that one big throw where they gave him the look. The safeties came down. He got the receiver over the top. He threw the deep ball, made a great catch. But you haven't gotten too much of that look from Bama. So what's going to happen is he's going to have to force one of those into a tight window at some point. And what's going to happen is he's either going to make a big play or it's going to get picked. And in that case, will he make that play again? Because at some point, they're going to have to take the big risk.
They
Other than when
gotta,
he
they
gets it.
got, they
Yeah,
gotta do something. You can't just you can't play conservative against Alabama. I want to see a fake punt. I want to see a flea flicker. I want to see a double reverse. I want to see their Georgia's big tight end and Pickens just run down the sideline and you just throw it up to those big targets. That to me, Kirby Smart, man, you're just jab. Hit the knockout punch, and I'm rooting for Alabama.
absolutely. And they're going to the body as well. But overall, you're not seeing too many guys leave the chin open. And that's where you're looking at right now. Both of these guys know they have knockout punches, knockout power. I think it's more on the Bama side, even with the top two receivers out. The guys they have behind them may be inexperienced, which is probably one of the biggest issues with them getting open versus the
But they're
coverage.
super talented.
But they are absolutely super talented. And these are going to be guys you're going to be talking about after this year when Mechie and all those guys start to move on. These guys are going to come up and they're going to be the next stars at Bama. So it's not like there's a huge drop off in talent. It's a huge drop off in experience. They're not used to seeing that many coverages. They're not used to trying to fight to get open. They're used to being able to scheme each other open, get open off of each other's routes, and find ways to get open when they're in the game because it's a blowout. Now these guys are pressed into real game action and critical game action, and they're not making as many plays.
Okay, so let's start with Georgia. You're Kirby Smart now. It's halftime. What are you telling your guys? Because one of the things that I think mentally, I thought Georgia had to come out and lead at halftime because mentally these guys have been beaten up so many times by their big brother Alabama. You
Mm-hmm.
start to doubt yourself, right? So what does Kirby Smart do to get these guys' confidence up and say, hey, they're not that better than us? Look at the score. We're right in this. What do you say if you're Kirby Smart?
Well, if I'm Kirby Smart, that part is what they should say, but it's also in how do you execute what we want to do? How do we get it to change the way things are going in the first half? How do we get a little more consistent offense and not just looking for the big play? Well, it starts with the running game. Okay, you're not going to be able to run inside on Bama. They've shown you that tonight. They're not giving you inside the tackles much. You got to get the off tackle game going, and I don't mean wide sweeps and zones. I mean literally off tackle. Run power, run lead, run wham blocks, anything to get off tackle, running at the defensive ends, which tend to be lighter players. So those are the guys you want to attack. Stay away from the thick meat inside where the guards are. Work off tackle, get that going. Once you get that committed, make Bama pay for playing that two shell, and eventually you get them to break it and take your shot down the field on play action.
Okay. And now, if you're Nick Saban, what do you tell your guys? Obviously, you saw emotionally when Williams goes out with that knee injury. You're already without Mechie, your two top guys. That's basically like being without Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. I still think they have enough playmakers. If you're Alabama, what's your game plan? What are you telling these guys?
Well, if I'm Alabama, now I've got to take my shots. But what I'm going to have to do is I'm not going to rely on just go routes or post routes. I'm going to set it up. You've been throwing a heck of a lot of bubble screens. There are double moves off the bubble screen where you can hit a big play down the field. You've got them biting. They respect your receivers with the ball in their hands, right? They respect their ability to work the outside And what you got to do is you got to play on that. Play on the things that you're getting from the Georgia defense. Once again, another team you're not going to be able to run inside on. So work the edges like they were doing. Take your shots and keep them honest. But most importantly, it's time for you to put the double moves together. You've hit a lot of short stuff. You've thrown a lot of short stuff. Time to get those guys over aggressive and take advantage of it.
And not just that, you hit the nail on the head here. You want to take both of these teams are super aggressive on defense. So a little play action, a little fake pitch, throw it the other way, misdirection plays. One of the reasons why I picked Alabama here, I am 168 and I think 64 picking NFL games. And when I'm 50-50 and I'm not sure, I always look at two things, Jeff, and it's simple. I look at who's the better coach, who has a better quarterback. It's hard for me to believe that Bennett is going to outplay Young, the Heisman Trophy winner, and Kirby Smart, as good as a coach he is going to outcoach Nick Saban. So that's why I have Alabama winning in the second half. Jeff, who do you have winning and why?
I still have Alabama winning. Obviously, I don't think my score was going to hold up.
I had 37-30.
I had 34-24 Bama. Right now it's looking more maybe you get lucky to get the 20 the way things are going. But either way, I still think Bama pulls us out. I think they're going to continue to move the football. They've moved the football tonight. They just haven't finished in the end zone. At one point, one of those dams is going to break. They're going to end one of those drives in the end zone. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Georgia, and Georgia they've barely kept up with field goals. They're going to have a hard time keeping up if they can't find the end zone themselves.
I think if Alabama scores in the first half, Georgia's players are going to start to panic. Again, Alabama has been their big brother. Alabama has dominated them. And again, I don't understand. I mean, there's got to be a fake punt, right? Or would you say, Jeff, listen, it's 9-6. We're controlling them. Let's not do anything that's going to give them field position. Because right now it's a field position battle, right? Yeah. So do you expect Alabama to be a little bit more aggressive? Because look, this is a great point. Saban always has tricks up his sleeve.
Absolutely. There's going to be a shot taken or two shots. Either way, there's going to at some point, they're not going to hit you with just the basic stuff. They're going to take their shots. When do you take that shot? Do you take it when that team scores that first touchdown and you feel you have to score right now? Because sometimes that doesn't always work out for you. And that actually bury you because you take that big shot and it fails. And all of a sudden they have all the momentum. They go back down the field. And now it's not just one score, it's two scores that you're down. So it comes with timing. You got to pull it off at the right time, knowing exactly when to hit it. And you got to make sure when you hit it, you do it, you make sure it counts.
So would that be like, let me give you an example. There's about 8 minutes left in the third quarter. It's 4th and 2 at your own 20. And instead of letting your quarterback, Justin Herbert, make a play, you run a dive up the middle. I'm sorry. I've been picking on Brandon Staley, the head coach of the Chargers, all day. Because, Jeff, on my very first Monday night show, I said, actually it was the second week, I said, I've been watching Brandon Staley for 2 weeks now. This guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And everyone's like, oh, how can you say that, Justin Herbert? I'm like, he's terrible at game management. He has no feel for the game. So, that's my own personal issue because I'm so miserable that the Chargers didn't make the playoffs.
I don't know what's worse, his calls this week in that game or when the Jets had had the Bucks dead to rights, and he runs a quarterback sneak into that front on 4th and 2. And then they come up with it was a miscommunication. Yeah. That right there, I threw my hands up. I threw my hands up on that one.
Instead of going for the 7-point lead with Brady, and Brady has the ball back with a minute left, a defensive coach says we can't stop Brady. So if you thought you couldn't stop him, don't you want to be up 7, not 4?
I know if I'm going for it in that situation, quarterback sneak is not in the option.
Especially with
there are so many options.
Zach Wilson is not Cam Newton, right? He's not big and strong. He's a little undersized. All right. So, Jeff, finally, people say all the time, I'm interested to see what the ratings are because people say, oh, I get bored. I get bored of Alabama. To me, I'm not bored. I coached. I know how hard it is to stay on top. I was very successful. Very successful. Had a career winning percentage of over 800. Okay. But I never got to the Final Four. We got to the Elite 8. My record was, 125-40. great record. When I see Nick Saban every year dominating, I don't hate on him. I don't say, oh, I'm bored, because I know how hard it is to recruit. I know how hard it is to stay on top. So for all the people who say, oh, this is boring, no one cares about the SEC, it's SEC bias. What they did to Michigan and Cincinnati is not bias, it's
Yeah.
dominance, Jeff.
Absolutely. And like I said a couple of weeks ago, when those results came in, I said it on Twitter. If you were upset about SEC bias, this year's results aren't going to help you. All right.
Yeah.
Because they came out and handled business. Okay.
Right.
Cincinnati was a legit opponent. Bama dominated them. Michigan was a legit opponent. Georgia more than dominated them. They obliterated them. Okay. And we think about what they did to Ohio State, who a lot of people felt should have been there. They sent Ohio State packing convincingly, and they got sent home convincingly.
Great point. All right, Jeff. So what's coming on for Nuts and Bolts Sports? I have my show on Saturday. You guys are doing preview shows on Wednesday and Friday. Tell the fans how they can watch. And you want NFL coverage, you got it this week from Nuts and Bolts Sports.
Absolutely. So we're going to have an NFC preview show before Nuts and Bolts Sports this week on Wednesday. So stay tuned for that. And then the AFC preview will be Friday evening. So times will be posted soon. And then, of course, the week before Senior Bowl, we'll be covering Senior Bowl out there in Mobile. But before, we bring back Draft Central. So you're going to get some draft coverage starting up soon as well.
And Jeff, people are commenting about your ring. Can you show that ring on camera, please? Damn.
Yeah, it's a little bit unclear when I hold it like that. There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
And what's that ring?
This is my New England Football League Championship 2016.
Love it. Love it.
Yes.
All right, Jeff. Always a pleasure talking college football, talking sports with you. We'll see you later on this week on Nuts and Bolts Sports YouTube channel. Thanks so much for taking the time out at halftime.
Anytime.
All right. Great job, Jeff. All right. I want to thank Jeff. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I know there's a lot of programs you guys can watch during halftime. So thank you so much. Make sure to subscribe to the Nuts and Bolts YouTube channel. Make sure to give this a thumbs up. And we'll see you. The show's going to be Saturday this week because we do have Wild Card Saturday. And in the immortal words of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. You have a record that will never be broken.
You can't trip on that.
They hit big shots with Luka. I think the Clippers have no idea.
Oh, look at that reaction. Look at that reaction.